Hey guys, today I'm going to explain a 2010 movie named Harmony. This is the youngest inmate in the prison. He was taken to the prison at birth because his mother was a murderer. There is an unwritten rule in Korea: if a female prisoner is pregnant while in prison, they can give birth to the baby in prison and then raise it until it is 1.5 years old. So Jimmy was born in prison, and although the conditions were bad, but with his mother's by his side, Jimmy was a very good boy. Not only did the guards love him, even the murderers were kind to him. On Jimmy's first birthday, there was a big party for him. Grandma Law made his new dress by hand and Aunt radiated his birthday present. Even the prison guards came over to take his picture. But it didn't last long. The other day, a female murderer was brought in. She looked like she was in her 20s, but she had a face full of viciousness. Jimmy hadn't been afraid of people since he was a kid. He went over to the girl to say hello. The girl looked bored. She pushed him down. Jimmy was scared and cried. Mary rushed over to help him, and he slapped the girl in the face in anger. Jimmy was his absolute bottom line. The guards came and pulled him apart. They were then put in a brig. No one expected the girl to go crazy and bang her head against the wall. She wanted to die. Luckily, the guards found her and pulled her away. It turned out that the girl was a poor girl. Her stepfather had been beating her. He even tried to assault her. She had to fight back as hard as she could. She kicked him to the ground, but this annoyed him completely in a moment of desperation. She grabbed the ornament on the bed and smashed it down hard. Remembering this painful experience, the girl shuddered in fear. She cowered on the floor alone. She was already desperate of the world. Seeing the girl's attitude, no one even bothered to talk to her. Jamie stumbled over to her, hugged her tenderly, and smiled innocently. The girl looked up blankly, but this time she didn't push Jimmy away. During an outdoor activity, some tough female inmates came up to her. They wanted to pick up the girl at first. The girl didn't want to talk to them. She just wanted to play with little Jimmy. But they got in Jimmy's way. They pushed him to the ground. The girl was furious. She stood up and slapped him hard. The others noticed that Jimmy was being bullied, and they all rushed over to help him. Ever since Jimmy was born, he was like the sun in winters. He warmed everyone's heart soon. He was a year and a half old. According to prison rules, when a child turns 18 months old, he has to be given away to adoption. Jimmy's mother couldn't change that. She just wanted to see the outside world, for herself with her son. But there was only one way to get a holiday, and that was to make a difference. As she watched the chorus on stage that day, she had a bold idea in her mind, and then she approached the warden. She proposed that she wanted to form a choir. If the performance was successful, could she get a day off work? The warden was very understanding. She agreed straight away. It was a great opportunity, but Mary wasn't a very good singer. Jimmy cried at the very first word, not to mention forming a choir, but luckily Grandma Law in prison was a music professor at the university. Mary followed her around all day, begging her endlessly. Grandma Law was also an unfortunate woman. Her husband had betrayed her when she was young. She was having an affair with her best friend. She caught her in flagrante delicto. In her anger, she ran them over and killed him. That's why she was given a suspended death sentence. Because of this incident, her daughter has always resented her, so she refused to see her. After all these years, seeing her daughter has become her only wish. So only by forming a choir to have a chance to see her again. Grandma agreed, and then the fierce audition process began. The scene was spectacular. Next, it was hard to settle on a candidate, but then there was a bigger problem. There had to be a soprano in the band. While Mary was struggling, Mary's eyes fell on the withdrawn girl. She was a former music school student. To help little Jimmy, the girl agreed to do it. Soon the choir was formed. The group began to train as quickly as possible. Just as the group was making great progress, Jimmy suddenly burst into tears. He couldn't be coaxed. It was only after a checkup they discovered he had a fever. Mary sat down on the bed to cool him down with a towel, but her wrists were still handcuffed. When the policewoman saw that she couldn't bear this, she uncuffed her because a mother's hand is the best medicine for babies. Mary was terrified. She dragged her wounded body to her feet. With every last ounce of strength she could muster, she pushed her husband towards the coffee table behind her. Her husband was dead. Mary became a murderer. She was sent to prison. She lived in pain every day. Soon afterwards, a son is born. There is hope for Mary again. But there were rules in prison. When the child was 18 months old, they had to be given away for adoption. Until then, little Jimmy had never seen the outside world. Mary's only wish was to see the world for herself. So she asked the warden's permission to set up a prison choir. She was given a day off for a successful performance. A month later, the day of the performance arrived. Everyone was very nervous. They stood on the stage with blank expressions. Grandma Law was trying to ease the tension and probably kept smiling. Then the chorus began. What is this song? You can tell by the audience expressions. The performance was very mediocre, but suddenly a gesture, the piano changed its rhythm. A beautiful song, the joyful dance steps, and all of a sudden, the depressing atmosphere was gone. It was replaced by an unprecedented joy. The audience applauded for them. Many people were infected by the atmosphere. They swayed to the rhythm too. The show was a great success, and Mary got her holiday. She was so excited, she was like a child with sweets. But then came the bad news. Jimmy's adoptive parents have been confirmed. They had set the right date. They would come straight away to take the baby. But it was Mary's holiday. It was like a bucket of cold water had been thrown on Mary. She was frozen in her track. A few days later, she took Jimmy out of the prison for the first time. The boy ran unhappily, unaware that he was about to say goodbye to his mother. Arriving at the adoption home, Mary didn't have anything. All she had was a photo album. It was the only gift she could leave the boy. Looking at Jimmy having a good time, she thought she would just leave. But when she saw her, little Jimmy stood up straight away and ran over to him with excitement. Mary was trying to keep her smile on, trying to put her best face forward, but in the end she couldn't hold back. Once everything was arranged, Mary followed the officer out of the adoption home. But then suddenly there was a sound of a baby crying behind her. Mary rushed back, faced with a stranger. Jimmy burst into tears of fear through the playground glass. Mary's heart was breaking, but the only thing she could do now was to let go back in prison. Mary is very ill, but even when she got better, she is still in a state of depression because she couldn't let go of her son. To have a chance to see him again, Mary practiced her choral singing. Hard 4 years have passed. The choir was practicing on stage. Suddenly, a prison guard came running up to them in a hurry. She said that the Soul Theater was inviting them to perform. Hearing this, the crowd was thrilled at the performance. They would be able to see their families on an exceptional basis. The policewoman also told Mary Jimmy's foster parents had been invited soon. Soon the long-awaited day finally arrived. Everyone was nervous and ready. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Everybody stand with your hands up. What are you doing? Hurry up. There's been a thief. It's not too late to turn yourselves in, or you'll be in trouble. Women take off their prison uniforms and are searched by officers. They are members of the prison corps. They were about to go on stage to perform, but because the noble woman had lost her ring, she was forced to stop the performance. One woman tried to resist, but the officer grabbed her by her hair and held her in place. It's almost time for the show. The director of the finale rushes over. He was convinced that the woman in their prison wouldn't commit such an act of thief. If there's a problem with our corps, I'll be responsible for all the consequences. With the prison warden's guarantee, the crowd finally took to the stage. Their loved ones were invited to be there too. As the audience filled the stage, the women were nervous. But as soon as they opened their mouths, they became one with the stage. Each of them sang with their great emotion. They all sang with passion and hope. Despite the misery of life, the statue of a female prisoner could not be changed, but they can still live their lives to the fullest. At the end of the concert, the stage was filled with applause. Everyone was cheering up for them. Just then, the light suddenly went out. A few young boys in costume slowly came up. They came to the side of the female prisoners together. They completed their final performance. Mary looked at these lovely children. She couldn't help but think of her son. At that moment, a little boy took her hand. Mary was momentarily frozen. She felt very familiar, and then she looked down and saw it was Jimmy's unique mole. So it really was her son. With tears in her eyes, she held his little hand with conviction until the show was over. Mary rushed out. Her son was in front of her, but she didn't have the courage to identify him. She just wanted to hug him, but little Jimmy was a little scared. Mom, like you did in the morning when you went to kindergarten. Give your auntie a hug. I love you. I love you too. Before saying goodbye, the woman gave Mary a small gift. When she opened it, it was Jimmy and every moment of his growth. Looking at the familiar face of her son, Mary couldn't hold back any longer, but she knew her son had been happy for the past 4 years. That was enough for her mother on the other hand. On the other hand, Grandma Law received news South Korea had enacted a new law to reinstate the death penalty. Death was not so terrible, but she still had one unfinished wish, to see her daughter one more time before she left the prison. Guards escorted her home. She was allowed to say her final goodbyes to her family. Seeing her mother with gray hair, her daughter finally spoke up, Mummy. Baby, I'm sorry it's been 20 years. In fact, in her heart, she had already forgiven her mother. It's just that she had never had the courage to express her years of guilt to her mother after returning to prison. Mary jokingly said that she had made up with her daughter. Would she not want her daughters anymore? But before she could say anything else, the prison guard opened the door and came out. Everyone was silent. They knew what it meant. After all this time together, Grandma Law had become another mother to them. Grandmother-in-law slowly walked towards the execution chamber. But a song came from the cell. It was a song that sang to their mother. The sun was shining through the window. The old man looks back with a silver smile on his face.